Sign it now, Mum, or I swear I'll make your life hell. That was the first thing my son Victor hissed into my ear as he shoved a stack of papers across the desk at the county office. His hand clamped down on my shoulder so hard I felt the sting through my sweater. The clerk froze, her pen hovering in mid-air, eyes darting between us. My daughter-in-law Lacey leaned in with a sugar-sweet smile that barely hid the steel in her voice. "It's for your own good, Eleanor. Stop being so difficult." I wanted to vanish right there, swallowed whole by the linoleum floor. Every head in the waiting area seemed to turn toward me, and I felt the hot flush of humiliation burn up my neck. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. My name is Eleanor. I'm 69 years old, and I never thought I would be the kind of woman who needed to slip secret notes to strangers, just to keep her own son from stealing everything she had worked for. But here I was, cornered in a government office with my own blood pressing me to sign away my life. Victor had been restless that morning, pacing like a man about to close the biggest deal of his career. Lacey hovered beside him, clutching her designer purse like a trophy she had already won. They both knew what was at stake. 6 acres of land, the house where I raised my children, everything my late husband and I had poured our lives into. It was worth more than $2.5 million, and I was the only obstacle standing in their way. "Mum, just sign. Stop pretending you understand these forms." Victor's voice cut through the hum of the office. People were whispering now, trying not to look, but I could feel their curiosity crawling across my skin. My hand trembled over the page, not from weakness, but from rage. I had balanced our family books for decades, paid every bill to the penny, and here was my son treating me like a doddering fool. Lacey leaned closer, her perfume cloying, her words dripping with condescension. "Think of the stress you put on everyone when you refuse. We only want to make things easier for you. If you cared about family, you'd do this." The clerk's eyes widened slightly, her knuckles tightening around the pen. She had probably seen disputes before, but I doubted she had ever watched a son grind his mother into submission right there at the counter. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my face calm. Inside, though, a storm raged. I thought of the countless nights I had stayed up with Victor when he was a sick child, the way I had covered his debts when he was young and reckless, even the $40,000 I had handed him years ago to start his real estate business. He had promised he would pay it back. He never did. And now he wanted more. He wanted everything. "Mum, don't embarrass us," Victor muttered under his breath, but the edge in his tone was sharp enough to cut. His grip on my shoulder tightened. I felt trapped, like prey caught in a snare. Lacey's smile never faltered, but her eyes glittered with triumph, as if she already saw herself walking through the doors of my home, rearranging the furniture to suit her taste. The clerk cleared her throat softly, trying to diffuse the tension. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you understand what you're about to sign?" she asked, her voice careful, almost hesitant. I caught her gaze and held it for a long moment. She saw something in my eyes, something Victor and Lacey were too blinded by greed to notice. She saw the truth. I slid my hand across the counter, not toward the papers, but toward a scrap of receipt paper near the pen holder. My fingers curled around it as naturally as if I were steadying myself. My son's voice droned on, trying to corner me with words, but I blocked him out. Slowly, I wrote 3 short words that could change everything. Help. Not my choice. I folded the note, my heart pounding in my ears, and slipped it toward the clerk when Victor turned his head to check his phone. Her eyes flickered down, then back up to meet mine. For a moment, nothing moved. Then I saw her shoulders straighten, and her lips press into a thin line. She understood. The air in the office shifted, heavy with tension, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what would happen next. Victor tapped the desk impatiently. "Come on, Mom. Stop wasting time." Lacey leaned closer, whispering like a snake in my ear. "Sign it, or we'll make decisions for you. Either way, you're done." What they didn't realize was that in that single moment, the balance of power had shifted. They thought I was cornered. They thought I was weak. But I had just set something in motion they could never control. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the smallest flicker of hope ignite inside me. This was only the beginning. After the scene at the county office, I could not shake the weight pressing on my chest. I walked out of that building with my son and his wife flanking me on either side, but inside I felt as though I had been led to the edge of a cliff. They thought they had won. They thought the papers on that desk were as good as signed. But I knew better. I had slipped the note. The clerk had seen it. That was the only thread of hope I carried with me as we drove back toward my house in tense silence. When I finally closed my front door behind me, the memories rushed in. My husband Tom's laughter echoing through the hall, the smell of sawdust clinging to his jackets when he came home from the contracting jobs. The years we spent patching up this house together, one paycheck at a time, until it stood sturdy against the Oregon rain. Those walls held 40 years of sacrifice. They also held the truth of what I had given to my children. Victor was not always like this. I remember him as a little boy with scraped knees, running into my arms for comfort. I remember staying up all night with him when he had chickenpox, rocking him until the fever broke. I remember the years when Tom and I stretched every dollar so that Victor could go to college. We skipped vacations. I worked extra shifts. Tom picked up side jobs. We told ourselves it would be worth it, that one day our son would stand on his own feet. But adulthood did not change Victor's appetite for more. 10 years ago, he came to me with a grand plan. He wanted to launch his own real estate business. He had charm, he had ambition, and he swore he only needed a boost to get started. I pulled $40,000 out of my savings. I told him it was a loan, not a gift. He promised he would pay it back within 5 years. That money vanished into failed deals, overpriced office furniture, and dinners meant to impress clients who never signed contracts. Not $1 ever came back. When Tom passed away 3 years ago, I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. I sold his truck, paid off the last of the medical bills, and told myself I would live quietly. I kept the 6 acres of land we had bought outside town. We had dreamed of planting apple trees, maybe building a little cabin for the grandkids one day. That land was more than dirt. It was the last piece of Tom I could still hold. I should have known that land would become a target. Victor started circling like a hawk not long after the funeral. He dropped hints at Sunday dinners about how valuable property had become. Lacey asked casual questions about the deeds and titles. At first, I thought it was idle talk. I was wrong. 2 months ago, Victor appeared at my kitchen table with a new story. He said he was drowning in debt from a bad investment. He leaned close, his voice low, and told me the bank was going to come after him. He begged me to let him use the land as collateral just until he got back on his feet. I said no. That land was not his safety net. It was my future. His face hardened in a way I had never seen before. Since then, the pressure had been relentless. Lacey stopped pretending to be sweet. She showed up with a binder full of articles about elderly people making mistakes with their finances. She told me horror stories of widows scammed by strangers, implying that I was next if I did not let them take over. Victor kept repeating that I was confused, that I was forgetful. He pointed to little things, like the time I misplaced my keys or when I forgot a doctor's appointment, as if those slips proved I could not handle my own life. I knew the difference between normal aging and real decline. My mind was sharp. My checkbook balanced to the penny. My garden thrived because I still remembered every detail of planting schedules. But their words cut deep. It is hard not to question yourself when your own child insists you are failing. What hurt most was remembering all I had sacrificed for them. Tom and I went without new clothes, without dinners out, without repairs we should have made, just so we could keep money aside for Victor's dreams. We wanted to believe in him, and in return, he had turned me into a problem to be solved. That night, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, staring at the folder of papers they had shoved in front of me. My reflection in the window looked back with silver hair and tired eyes. Yet behind that fatigue was something stronger. I was not a frail woman ready to be tucked away. I was a woman who had survived the loss of a husband, the struggles of raising children, the grind of keeping a home running. I was still capable. The humiliation of that morning still burned, but it also cleared the fog. I began to see their plan for what it really was. It was not about love or care. It was about control. They wanted my land, my house, my savings. They wanted to strip me of independence and package it as protection. I thought of Tom again. He had always told me, "Eleanor, you are stronger than you think." I whispered those words to myself as I locked away the papers in the old cedar chest in my bedroom. I was done being cornered. I would find a way to fight back. By the time the clock struck midnight, I had made a decision. I would not let their lies define me. I would seek help, and I would expose the truth, even if it meant dragging my own son into the light he had tried so hard to avoid. The next morning, I rose early, made myself coffee, and pulled out the worn address book Tom and I had kept for years. My finger traced down the page until I found the name I needed. Samuel Ortega, an old friend of the family and a lawyer who had stood by us in the past. My hands trembled as I dialed his number, not from fear, but from the surge of determination building inside me. "Samuel," I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need your help. My son is trying to take everything from me." The silence on the other end told me he understood more than I had said. The call to Samuel gave me courage, but it did not erase the tension in my home. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, the early morning light falling across the wood grain, and tried to steady my breathing. I knew I had taken the first step toward protecting myself, but I also knew Victor and Lacey would not back off easily. Their campaign was only just beginning. That very afternoon, they showed up unannounced. I was in the garden trimming the rose bushes when I heard their car pull into the driveway. Lacey walked ahead, carrying a grocery bag, as if she were delivering kindness. Victor followed close behind, his phone already in his hand. "Mom, we thought we'd bring dinner," Lacey said brightly, lifting the bag to show containers of takeout. "You shouldn't be cooking so much at your age." I brushed dirt from my gloves and forced a polite smile. "I'm perfectly fine, thank you. You didn't need to come by today." Victor scanned the yard with that calculating look I had come to dread. "The step on the porch is still loose," he said. "You could trip, and those tools lying around are a hazard." He typed something quickly into his phone, no doubt another note in his running list of supposed evidence that I was unsafe. Inside the house, they unpacked the food and made themselves comfortable at my table. I set plates out because it seemed easier than fighting, but as I watched them move through my kitchen, I felt like an intruder in my own home. Lacey wiped a perfectly clean counter and shook her head like she had discovered a mess. When we sat down to eat, Victor placed an envelope in front of me. "These are just some forms from the bank," he said casually. "It will simplify things if you add our names to your accounts. Backup signers in case of an emergency. I pushed the envelope back across the table. I told you before, I manage my accounts just fine. There's no need. His jaw tightened. Mum, stop being stubborn. This is standard. Every responsible family does this. Lacey reached for my hand, her tone soft but laced with warning. We only want to protect you. What if something happened tomorrow and bills needed to be paid? Don't you want peace of mind? I pulled my hand away. Peace of mind doesn't come from handing over my life to someone else. I'll keep managing my own affairs. The air at the table chilled. Victor stabbed at his food, chewing hard, while Lacey plastered on her smile again. They left soon after, but not without leaving the envelope behind on the counter. I slipped it unopened into the cedar chest with the other documents. That night, I noticed something strange. My pill organizer on the kitchen shelf was out of order. Tuesday's slot held Friday's pills. My vitamins were mixed with my blood pressure tablets. I froze, staring at the box, replaying the countless mornings I had filled it carefully. I knew I had not made that mistake. A chill crawled up my spine. The next day, Lacey called. Mum, have you been feeling confused? We worry about you taking the wrong medication. Her voice was syrupy, but her words cut like knives. I didn't mix the pills, I said firmly. Of course, she answered quickly as if humoring a child. But what if you did and didn't notice? That's exactly why we think you need support. I ended the call and sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking. They were planting seeds of doubt, trying to make me second-guess myself. I looked at the neat stack of bills on the counter, each paid on time. I thought of the balanced checkbook in the drawer, the garden thriving outside, the home clean and orderly. Nothing about my life reflected incompetence. Yet their voices wormed into my thoughts, whispering that maybe I was slipping. Later that week, Victor arrived without warning again. He walked through the house like an inspector, opening cabinets, checking expiration dates on milk and bread. He snapped pictures of my medicine bottles with his phone. What are you doing? I demanded. Just keeping track, he said smoothly. Sarah worries about you. We need to make sure you're safe. You mean Lacey? I corrected. He ignored me, already scrolling through his phone. It's documentation. If something happens, we'll have proof of what you've been taking. I stood in the doorway watching him, anger burning in my chest. He was not protecting me. He was building a case. Every photo, every note, every staged concern was ammunition to convince others that I was incompetent. That evening, I called Samuel again. They're escalating, I told him. Mixing my pills, taking pictures, trying to make me doubt myself. His voice was steady. Write down everything. Every visit, every conversation, every irregularity with your medications. Keep a record. We'll need it. I promised I would. After we hung up, I sat in the living room staring at Tom's old recliner. He would have known exactly what to say. He would have stormed into the kitchen and told Victor to stop this madness. But Tom was gone, and I had to fight alone. The days that followed brought more of the same. Lacey called twice a day, her voice dripping with concern, but always circling back to my supposed forgetfulness. Victor kept showing up with articles printed from the internet about dementia, about elderly people losing fortunes because they refused to accept help. Each piece of paper he waved in front of me was meant to chip away at my confidence. But the more they pressed, the clearer it became. Their kindness was a mask. Their concern was a weapon. And every move they made pushed me closer to the truth. One evening I stood in front of the mirror in the hallway. The woman looking back at me had silver hair, tired eyes, and a line of worry etched across her forehead. But those eyes were still sharp. That woman was not confused. She was waking up. I whispered to my reflection, "They think I'm weak. They think I'll fold. But they're wrong." The reflection stared back with quiet determination. I knew then that I was not imagining things. There was a pattern, their visits, their staged incidents, the documents on my counter. It was not coincidence. It was a plan, and I had just begun to uncover it. The breaking point came on a grey Thursday morning. I had just settled in with a cup of tea when the knock came at my door. I opened it to find Victor standing there with a man I had never seen before. The stranger carried a clipboard and wore a badge clipped to his shirt pocket. Lacey was not far behind, her smile painted on, as always. "Mum, this is Mr. Harris," Victor said. "He's here to do a quick safety evaluation of your house. Standard procedure. Nothing to worry about." I stared at the man, then at my son. "I didn't ask for an evaluation," I said. Victor gave a tight smile. "We asked for it. We want to make sure you're safe here. You should be grateful." Before I could protest, Harris stepped inside and began walking from room to room. He scribbled notes as he checked the outlets, the throw rugs, the stairs. Lacey followed him, nodding as if each observation confirmed what she already believed. I trailed behind, my fists clenched at my sides. In the kitchen, Harris pointed to the pill organizer on the counter. "Who manages your medication?" he asked. "I do," I answered. Victor cut in before I could say more. "She's been mixing them up. We've been really concerned. That's why we wanted you here." My mouth went dry. I wanted to shout that it wasn't true, that they were the ones tampering. But Harris barely looked at me. His pen scratched across the paper, another mark against me in a file I had not agreed to. When they reached the living room, Victor pulled open the drawer where I kept bills and waved one of the envelopes in Harris's direction. "Sometimes she forgets payments. We try to help, but she resists." "That is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "Every bill is paid on time. Check the dates yourself." But Harris only nodded and wrote something down. I felt the heat of humiliation rise up my neck. My own son was parading me like a helpless old woman in front of a stranger. After Harris left, promising to file his report, Victor turned to me. His face was hard, his voice low. "You're making this more difficult than it has to be. If you'd just cooperate, we wouldn't have to bring people in." I met his eyes. "This is my home. You don't get to decide how I live." Lacey stepped closer, her tone sweet but her words sharp. "Mum, don't you see? You're proving our point. Look how defensive you are. If you can't accept help, the county might have to step in." I felt the room spin for a moment. County? Step in. They were not just manipulating me privately anymore. They were building a case to take everything publicly. Later that evening, the phone rang. It was a neighbour, Mrs. Yates, who had lived down the street for 20 years. She hesitated before speaking. "Eleanor, I wanted to check on you. Your daughter-in-law mentioned at church that you've been having memory problems. I thought I'd call to see if you needed anything." I nearly dropped the receiver. Shame burned hotter than anger. They were spreading lies in the community now, weaving a story of decline that would be hard to shake. I assured Mrs. Yates that I was fine, but when I hung up, my hands would not stop trembling. It was one thing to gaslight me in private, but to drag my name through the neighbourhood, to tarnish the reputation I had built over decades, that was cruelty of another kind. That night, I sat in Tom's old recliner staring at the ceiling. My chest ached with betrayal. I thought of the times I had defended Victor when teachers called about his behaviour. I thought of the money I had loaned him, the meals I had cooked, the way I had loved him even when he stumbled. And now he was orchestrating a campaign to declare me unfit, to steal the very foundation of my life. Sleep would not come. At 2 in the morning, I rose and walked through the house, checking every lock, opening each cabinet to prove to myself that everything was in order. My checkbook lay balanced to the cent. My pantry was stocked neatly. My garden tools were lined up on the porch. The house was fine. I was fine. But the echo of Victor's voice haunted me. The county might have to step in. For the first time, I understood how far he was willing to go. He would not stop at persuasion. He was laying the groundwork for legal action, for guardianship, for stripping me of every right I still had. The next morning, I found the envelope of bank forms back on the counter. I knew I had locked it away in the cedar chest, but there it was again, waiting. A sticky note stuck to the top read, "Sign today, no more delays." My stomach turned. He had gone through my things while I was out in the yard. I crumpled the note and shoved the envelope deep into the drawer. My hands shook with fury. They were not just pressuring me. They were invading my privacy, taking pieces of my life without permission. By the time the sun set that day, I felt stripped bare. Humiliated by the inspection, exposed by the gossip, violated by the intrusion into my home. I had reached the edge of despair. But even as the weight of it threatened to crush me, a spark of resolve flickered. They wanted me to believe I was powerless. They wanted me ashamed and silent. I was neither. I went to my desk, pulled out a notebook, and began to write. Every date, every visit, every manipulation. I listed the tampered pills, the staged inspection, the lies spread to neighbors. Each page steadied me. Each word became a weapon I would one day use. As I closed the notebook and set it beside the lamp, I whispered to the empty room, "You think you're breaking me, Victor, but you're only making me stronger." The morning after the inspector's visit, I knew I could not sit in silence any longer. The humiliation still burned in me, but beneath it was a steady determination. I needed someone who could look at the situation clearly, someone who would not be swayed by Victor's charm or Lacey's fake concern. That is why I drove to Samuel Ortega's office. The small law building sat near the courthouse, its brick walls weathered but solid. When I stepped inside, the scent of old books and polished wood met me. Samuel came out from behind his desk as soon as he saw me. His hair had turned silver since the last time I saw him, but his eyes were sharp and kind. "Eleanor," he said, gripping my hand warmly, "what brings you in today?" I lowered myself into the chair across from him and took a long breath. "It's Victor. He's trying to take everything from me. The land, the house, even my bank accounts. They've been pressuring me non-stop. I don't know how much longer I can keep them at bay." His expression grew serious. "Tell me exactly what they've done." For the next half hour, I laid it all out. The papers they had pushed under my nose, the staged concern, the tampered medication, the county inspector who walked through my home. I told him about the gossip Lacey had started and the envelope with the sticky note demanding my signature. Samuel listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his chin. "Eleanor, this is classic financial elder abuse. They are laying a foundation to prove incompetence. Once they get that, they can petition the court for control over your assets. If you sign anything now, you hand them the keys yourself." I clenched my fists in my lap. They want me to believe I'm helpless, but I'm not. "You're not," he agreed firmly, "but you need protection. First, gather every document they've given you and keep it safe. Second, start a detailed log of every interaction. Dates, times, exact words if you can. Third, we need to review your legal protections. Do you have a current power of attorney or trust set up? I have a simple will, but nothing beyond that, I admitted. Then we'll fix that, he said. We'll create a trust that protects your land and your home. We'll draft a power of attorney that names someone you trust, not them. And we'll schedule a competency evaluation. If a doctor certifies you're fully capable, it destroys their narrative before they can use it against you. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. How long will this take? A few weeks at most, he said. But we need to be careful. If Victor and Lacey suspect you're building defenses, they may escalate. So act as though you're still considering their proposals. Let them show their hand. The more evidence we gather, the stronger your case will be. I nodded slowly. It made sense. It also meant more days of enduring their manipulation, their smug certainty that I would cave. But now I had a plan. As I rose to leave, Samuel put a hand on my shoulder. You're not alone in this, Eleanor. I've seen too many families torn apart by greed. But you're sharper than they give you credit for. Hold on to that. His words stayed with me as I drove home. The sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that threatened rain, but never quite released it. My mind raced with everything I needed to do. I opened the cedar chest that evening and gathered every envelope, every paper Victor had left behind. I sorted them carefully into a folder marked with today's date. Then I opened a notebook and began writing in detail everything that had happened. The act of putting it down on paper steadied me. The lies and tricks became evidence, no longer just whispers in my mind. The next few days, I kept my routine outwardly the same. I tended my garden, cooked my meals, and smiled when Lacey called. She pressed me with the same questions. Have you thought about signing yet? Wouldn't it be easier if we just handled things for you? I gave vague answers, pretending to hesitate. Inside, I wrote down every word as Samuel had told me. Victor appeared one evening with a new tactic. He laid out glossy pamphlets for assisted living facilities across my kitchen table. Mum, these places are beautiful. They have nurses on staff, activities, even a shuttle service. You would love it. I looked at the photos of manicured lawns and smiling seniors. My voice stayed calm. I'm not moving. I'm capable of living in my own home. His smile faltered. You're being unreasonable. Do you want to collapse here alone one day? Do you want to put that on us? I met his eyes. I want to live my life on my terms. That's not unreasonable. He gathered the pamphlets with a sharp motion, his frustration barely contained. We'll talk again, he muttered. When he left, I wrote down every word. Then I locked the pamphlets in the folder with the other papers. The following week, Samuel called. I've reviewed the documents Victor left you. They're not just powers of attorney. They include quitclaim deeds that transfer your land outright to him. If you had signed, you would already own nothing. A chill went through me. He told me it was just precaution. That's the trick, Samuel said. They dress theft up as concern. But now we have proof of intent. I sat at my kitchen table holding the phone, staring at the folder of papers. The weight of betrayal pressed down heavy, but underneath it was a growing fire. They thought I was too old, too weak, too naive to notice. But I had noticed. And now I had allies who believed me. That night I closed my notebook after writing the day's entry and placed my pen neatly on top. The house was quiet, the garden dark outside the window. I whispered into the silence. You underestimated me, Victor. You always did. A few days after Samuel reviewed the documents, he called me back to his office. His voice on the phone had been calm, but there was a weight behind it that made my stomach twist. When I walked into his office, he already had a folder open on his desk. He gestured for me to sit and pushed the folder toward me. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "I found something you need to see." Inside the folder were copies of loan applications filed under Victor's name. The property listed as collateral was my 6 acres of land. The amount requested was $500,000. My throat closed as I read the numbers again and again, hoping they would change. "He tried to mortgage my land?" I asked. Samuel nodded. "Not tried. He already submitted the paperwork. The only thing missing is your signature on those deeds. If you had signed what he brought you, the bank would have approved this loan within days. He planned to pull out $500,000 secured by your property." I sat back in the chair, my hands gripping the arms to steady myself. All the pressure, the staged concern, the tampered medication, it all snapped into place. He had not just wanted control, he had wanted cash. My land was nothing more than a lever for his debts. "He told me it was a precaution," I whispered. "That's the lie they always use," Samuel said. "But the intent is clear. He is not preparing to take care of you. He is preparing to strip you of everything." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This was my son, the boy I had carried, fed, and fought for. Now I saw him for what he was becoming, a man willing to gamble away his mother's future for his own comfort. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We build a wall around your assets," Samuel replied. "I've already started drafting a revocable trust. Your land, your house, your accounts, all of it will be placed into that trust. Only you control it. If something happens to you, I step in as trustee, not Victor. That way he has no pathway to seize anything." I nodded, my chest still tight. "How soon can this be done?" "In 2 weeks," he said. "But until then you must be careful. They may sense you're resisting and push harder. Do not sign anything. Do not give them access. And keep documenting everything." I left his office with the folder in my arms, the evidence heavy but clarifying. I finally understood the full scope of their plan. It was not about assisted living or safety. It was about money. They needed cash fast, and I was the easiest target. That night, Victor called. His tone was smooth, almost cheerful. "Mom, Lacey and I have been thinking. We should stop dragging this out. Let's meet at the bank Saturday morning and finalize everything. We'll bring a notary. It will only take a few minutes." My pulse quickened. He was pushing for the moment he thought I was too tired to resist. "I'll think about it," I said. "There's nothing to think about," he replied. "It's just paperwork. You'll feel so much better when it's settled." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the phone. Fear prickled at me, but so did resolve. He believed I was still wavering. That belief would be my advantage. The next day, Lacey arrived with her usual sugary smile. She brought bagels and coffee, setting them out like an offering. Then she slid another set of documents across the table. "These are simpler than before," she said sweetly. "Just joint account forms, backup signatures, nothing else." I opened the folder. The language was clear enough for anyone to see. Joint account holders could withdraw funds, transfer money, even close accounts. It was not backup. It was full control. "You really think I don't read these?" I asked. Her smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. "Of course you read them, Mum. But wouldn't it be nice to stop worrying? You could relax knowing we're taking care of things." I closed the folder and pushed it back. "I'll have my lawyer look at them first." The color drained slightly from her face. "There's no need for that. Lawyers are expensive. This is just family business." "Then you won't mind me waiting," I said. Her eyes flickered with anger before she forced another smile. "We'll talk again Saturday. When she left, I locked the papers in the cedar chest and wrote down the entire exchange in my notebook. The pattern was undeniable now. They were accelerating, trying to corner me before I could fortify myself. Friday night, I gathered every important document I owned and placed them in a small fireproof safe in my bedroom. I slept lightly, waking at every sound, my mind racing through what Saturday would bring. The morning came bright and cold. Victor and Lacey pulled into my driveway at 9 sharp. My grandchildren ran to the backyard to play, while their parents walked inside with determined faces. Victor carried a leather portfolio. Lacey carried a smile that looked carved from stone. "We're ready," Victor said. "The notary will meet us at the bank at 11. Bring your ID, and we'll get this over with." I poured myself coffee, steadying my hands. "I'll go," I said quietly. Relief flashed across their faces. They thought the battle was won. They did not see the steel forming inside me, the knowledge Samuel had given me, or the plan beginning to unfold. As they gathered the children and bustled toward the door, Victor looked back at me. "You'll thank us one day, Mom. We're saving you from yourself." I held his gaze without answering. My heart pounded, but not with fear anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger rising. This was no longer just about resisting. This was about exposing the truth. Saturday arrived like a storm cloud hanging over my house. I moved slowly through my morning routine, my body steady, but my mind racing. I knew Victor and Lacey believed this would be the day they finally secured control. What they did not know was that I had no intention of handing them my life. At 10 o'clock sharp, their SUV pulled into my driveway. The children tumbled out first, running to the backyard, oblivious to the tension thickening in the air. Victor walked in carrying his leather portfolio, his steps brisk and impatient. Lacey followed close behind, a forced brightness in her voice as she said, "Ready for a smooth morning, Mum? This will all be over soon." I set my coffee cup down carefully. "I'm ready, Pill," I answered, keeping my tone neutral. The drive to the bank felt like a funeral procession. I sat in the back seat staring out the window, watching familiar streets blur past. Victor and Lacey chatted in low tones in the front, occasionally glancing at me as though I were cargo they needed to deliver. My hands rested in my lap, but inside every muscle was tight, prepared. When we arrived, a man in a suit was waiting in the lobby. Victor introduced him as Mike, their notary. He smiled with false warmth and shook my hand. "This will only take a few minutes, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. His tone was professional, but his eyes told a different story. He was here to push this through quickly. The bank manager, Patricia Alvarez, met us near the counter. She led us into a small private office and closed the door. Her expression was neutral as she opened the folder of forms Victor handed her. "So you want to add joint account holders to all of your accounts?" she asked. "Yes," Victor answered before I could speak. "For emergencies." Patricia's eyes moved to me. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you understand that joint account holders have full access to withdraw money, transfer funds, and close accounts without your permission?" I met her gaze and held it. "I understand." Victor shifted impatiently. "She's tired, but she knows what she's doing. Let's just move this along." Patricia did not look at him. She kept her eyes on me. "Are you comfortable with this decision, Mrs. Whitmore?" My voice was steady. "I suppose it's necessary," I said, letting a trace of hesitation slip through. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded slip of paper. While Victor leaned toward his phone and Lacey adjusted her jacket, I slid the note across the desk to Patricia. 3 words in sharp black ink. "Help, not my choice." Her eyes flickered down, then back up, her face unreadable. She cleared her throat. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, could you step outside for a moment while I verify a few details with your mother? Victor frowned. Is that really necessary? It's standard procedure, Patricia replied smoothly. I'll just need a few minutes. Reluctantly, Victor and Lacey left the room. As soon as the door closed, Patricia leaned forward, lowering her voice. You're being pressured, aren't you? Yes, I whispered. They've been at this for weeks. They want my land, my house, my money. They tampered with my pills, spread lies to neighbours, even brought an inspector. It's all part of their plan. Patricia's eyes hardened. This is financial elder abuse. I'll file a report immediately. In the meantime, we'll set flags on your accounts. Any unusual activity will alert me directly. They won't know, but we'll be watching. Relief washed through me. For the first time, I felt someone outside my circle of grief and betrayal stand beside me. The door opened and Victor strode back in, his patience gone. What's taking so long? Patricia straightened, her voice calm. Everything's in order. We just need the notarization. Mike stepped forward with his stamp. I placed the pen in my hand, forcing it to tremble slightly. I signed, letting Victor see what he thought was his victory. At the same moment, Patricia discreetly angled her phone on the desk, recording the way Victor leaned over me, his hand pressing into my shoulder. His smile for the camera looked triumphant. Mine looked tired, but my eyes burned with something he could not see. When it was over, Victor clapped his hands together. Finally, now we can take better care of you. Lacey squeezed my arm. You'll thank us later, Mum. I said nothing. Patricia slid her card across the desk. Mrs. Whitmore, if you have any questions about your accounts, call me any time. Her eyes met mine with meaning. I slipped the card into my purse. The ride home was filled with Victor and Lacey chattering about how much simpler life would be now, how I wouldn't have to stress over money anymore. I stared out the window, silent. They believed the war was over. They believed they had won. But I knew better. They had crossed a line in that office, and now I had proof. Their greed had given me the very tools I needed to fight back. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the apple trees, I sat at my kitchen table with Patricia's card in front of me. I dialed her number, my voice steady when she answered. Patricia, I said, thank you for what you did today. You probably saved me. She was quiet for a moment, then replied, Mrs. Whitmore, you are far from powerless. With what we recorded today, you have more strength than you realize. Don't give up. I hung up the phone and sat in silence, letting her words settle over me. They thought I was weak. They thought I was fading. But every move they made only sharpened my resolve. Victor had taken his best shot at breaking me that day, parading me into a bank like a child in need of guardianship. Instead, he had handed me the evidence I needed. The battle was no longer about survival. It was about justice. The night after the bank visit, I could not sleep. I sat in my kitchen with Patricia's card on the table and my notebook open beside it. The house was quiet, the only sound the ticking clock on the wall. I went back through every page I had written, each entry a reminder of the campaign Victor and Lacey had built against me. The tampered pills, the staged inspections, the gossip, the forged papers, all of it formed a pattern too precise to be chance. They thought they had tightened the noose, but what they did not realize was that every step had left a trail. The next morning I called Samuel and told him everything that happened at the bank. He listened carefully, his voice calm but urgent. Patricia's recording is powerful evidence, he said. With that, plus your notes and the documents Victor gave you, we can build a case. But we need to move fast. They already took the first step by adding themselves to your accounts. It won't be long before they try to move money. My heart thudded as I asked, "What do I do until then?" "Act normal," he said. "Don't tip them off. Let them believe you're still wavering. That will keep them from rushing. Meanwhile, I'll file for temporary protections and prepare a motion to freeze those accounts. Once it's in place, they won't be able to touch a cent without court approval." I closed my notebook and nodded, even though he could not see me. "I'll hold steady." For the rest of the week, I followed his advice. When Lacey called with her syrupy voice asking if I was feeling clearer today, I answered with vague replies. When Victor dropped by unannounced with new forms in his hand, I smiled faintly and said I needed more time. Each encounter I recorded in detail as soon as they left. But inside I was preparing. I went through every drawer, every file cabinet, gathering important papers. Birth certificates, the deed to the land, my marriage license, my husband's death certificate, tax returns, insurance policies. I stacked them neatly in the fireproof safe in my bedroom. Then I copied key items and gave them to Samuel's office for safekeeping. At night, I sat in my recliner and thought of Tom. I imagined his steady hand on mine, his voice telling me I was strong enough to see this through. The grief of losing him never fully faded, but now it hardened into resolve. I could not let the land we had bought together, the home we had built brick by brick, fall into Victor's reckless hands. On Thursday evening, Victor came again, this time with a sharper edge. He walked through the house with a false air of authority, opening closets, checking the pantry, scribbling notes. "Mom, this place is too much for you," he said. "You can't keep up. We've already put down a deposit at Green Hills Assisted Living. It's time." The words landed like blows. "You did what?" He did not flinch. "We put down a deposit. Move-in could be next weekend. It's better this way. You'll be safe, and we can handle everything else." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "I never agreed to that." "You don't need to," he said coldly. "It's already in motion. All that's left is transferring the rest of the funds." When he left, I sank into a chair, my hands gripping the arms until my knuckles whitened. Fear clawed at me, but beneath it, anger surged stronger. He had crossed into open theft. This was not persuasion anymore. It was takeover. I called Samuel immediately. "He paid a deposit without my consent. He's planning to move me out of my own house." Samuel's voice was grim. "Then we escalate. Tomorrow morning we file for a restraining order and petition to freeze your accounts. I'll contact Patricia so she's ready to flag any suspicious transfers. Stay calm tonight. By this time tomorrow, you'll have legal protection." After I hung up, I went to the window and looked out at the dark yard. The apple trees stood still in the moonlight, silent witnesses to my life. For years I had nurtured them, pruned their branches, gathered their fruit. They were rooted deep, just like me. And just like me, they were not going anywhere. Friday morning, I met Samuel at his office. The folder of evidence lay heavy in my arms, but when I handed it to him, I felt lighter. He spread the papers across his desk, methodical and calm. Patricia had already sent over the recording and a note confirming she had flagged my accounts. "With this," Samuel said, tapping the pile, "we can show the court a clear pattern of coercion and abuse. Once the order is granted, they won't be able to withdraw a dime. And if they try, they risk criminal charges." I sat straighter, a flicker of relief warming me. For the first time in months, I was no longer reacting. I was preparing. That evening I returned home and went through the house with new eyes. Every corner Victor had criticized, every drawer Lacey had opened, now looked different. They weren't signs of weakness. They were proof of the life I had built. My home was organized, my bills were paid, my mind was clear. When the phone rang later that night, I let it go to voicemail. Victor's voice filled the machine. Mom, call me back. We need to finalize everything before the weekend. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I erased the message without listening further. I opened my notebook and wrote the date, the time, his exact words. Then I closed it with a firm hand. The storm was coming, but I was no longer afraid. I had my evidence, I had allies, and soon I would have the law on my side. Victor and Lacey thought they had cornered me. What they did not know was that I was already preparing to strike back. Saturday morning, the courthouse smelled of old paper and floor polish. I sat beside Samuel in a narrow wooden bench, clutching the folder of evidence like it was a lifeline. He leaned close and spoke quietly. Today is the day we stop them from touching another cent. His calm steadied me, but my stomach still churned. The hearing room filled quickly. Victor and Lacey swept in with sharp clothes and smug expressions, whispering to each other as if this were a business meeting. They avoided looking at me, though I felt their presence like a shadow. The judge, a tall man with silver glasses, entered and called the case. Samuel rose and presented the petition for a restraining order and the freeze on my accounts. He laid out the facts, one by one. The forged documents, the staged inspections, the tampered pills, the deposit made to the assisted living facility without my consent. Then he played Patricia's recording from the bank. The room went silent as Victor's voice filled the speakers, low and menacing, telling me to sign. The sound of his hand pressing into my shoulder was faint, but clear enough. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Whitmore, do you dispute this recording? Victor straightened his tie. Your Honor, my mother is confused. She misinterprets concern as control. We were trying to protect her. That recording is taken out of context. Lacey nodded quickly. We love her. We've only tried to help. Any financial moves were for her safety. Samuel remained calm. If that were true, why hide the quitclaim deeds disguised as precautionary forms? Why apply for a $500,000 loan using her land as collateral? Why pressure her repeatedly while spreading rumors of dementia in the community? He let the silence hang. This is not protection. This is exploitation. The judge looked at Victor again. Did you apply for a loan using your mother's land? Victor hesitated, his jaw tightening. I was exploring options. Nothing had been finalized. Exploring options with property that is not yours, the judge said flatly. I have heard enough. He signed the order with a heavy stroke. The accounts are frozen. Any attempt to access them will result in immediate criminal referral. Furthermore, this court issues a temporary restraining order against Victor and Lacey Whitmore. You are not to contact Mrs. Whitmore directly until further review. My breath rushed out in relief. For the first time in months, I felt the weight shift off my chest. But the confrontation was not over. As we left the courtroom, Victor stormed into the hallway, his composure cracking. He leaned close enough that I could see the anger in his eyes. You think you've won, Mom. This isn't finished. You'll regret this. Samuel stepped between us, his voice firm. Step back, Victor. You're already on thin ice. Lacey pulled at Victor's arm, whispering, Not here. They stalked away, their footsteps echoing off the marble walls. Outside the courthouse, the air felt brighter, almost clean. Samuel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. They're cornered. They will try something again. But now the law is on our side. Patricia is monitoring the accounts, and with this order in place, they can't move money. Next step is building the full case for permanent protection. I nodded, still absorbing the shift. For weeks I had been pushed, manipulated, humiliated. Now the balance had begun to turn. That evening I sat in my kitchen with my notebook open. I wrote every detail of the hearing, from Victor's pale face when the recording played to the sound of the gavel striking. Each line strengthened me. Each word reminded me that truth had power. The phone rang twice that night. I let it go to voicemail. Both messages were Victor's voice, each one angrier than the last. The first said, "You don't understand what you've done." The second ended with, "You've destroyed this family." I deleted them both. Sunday passed quietly. I walked through the garden, the air crisp with the first hint of autumn. The apple trees were heavy with fruit, their branches bending low. I picked a basketful and set them on the kitchen counter. They were mine. My land had produced them. That truth anchored me deeper than any words Victor could throw. But on Monday morning, Patricia called. Her voice was firm. "Eleanor, I flagged a transfer attempt last night. Victor tried to move $15,000 from one of the accounts. The system blocked it, and with the freeze in place, nothing went through. But he tried." My chest tightened. "Even after the court order?" "Especially after," she said. "It shows how desperate he is. I've already filed the incident report. It will strengthen your case." I thanked her and hung up, my hands steady as I reached for my notebook. I wrote it down, word for word, evidence piling higher. That night, I thought of Tom again. I imagined him smiling, telling me I had finally stopped letting our son's charm blind me. It hurt to face what Victor had become, but the pain no longer paralyzed me. It pushed me forward. The next confrontation would come soon. I could feel it in the tension of Victor's voice, in the hurried steps of Lacey beside him. They were losing control, and people like them did not surrender quietly. But neither did I. 2 days after the failed transfer attempt, I woke to the sound of a car door slamming in my driveway. I pulled back the curtain and saw Victor's SUV parked crooked, its headlights still on. My pulse quickened. I knew he was not here for a visit. The knock rattled the door a moment later. Before I could answer, Victor's voice cut through the wood. "Mom, open up. We need to talk now." I hesitated, then unlocked the door but kept the chain on. His face was tight with fury, his eyes bloodshot. Lacey stood behind him, arms crossed. "You went too far," he spat. "You dragged me into court, embarrassed me, froze the accounts. Do you know what you've done?" I met his glare calmly. "I protected myself. That's all." He shoved the door against the chain, making it rattle. "You think you can outsmart me? You've turned strangers against your own family. This ends today." Before I could reply, a second car pulled into the driveway. Samuel stepped out with a folder in his hand, followed by a uniformed officer. Relief surged through me. Samuel had anticipated this. The officer approached quickly. "Step back from the door, sir." Victor bristled. "This is my mother. I have every right to be here." "Not according to the restraining order," the officer said evenly. "Step back now." Lacey tugged at his sleeve. "Victor, let's not do this here." But Victor was beyond reason. "She owes me. She wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me. That land should have been mine years ago." The words sliced through me. It was not just about money. It was entitlement, deep and poisonous. Samuel held up the folder. "Actually, Eleanor owns everything free and clear. And as of this morning, the trust documents are finalized. Every asset, every account, every acre of land is secured. You have no claim to any of it." Victor's face drained of color. "You can't do that without me." "I already did," I said quietly. The officer stepped closer. Sir, you need to leave, or I'll place you under arrest. Victor's fists clenched, but Lacey finally pulled harder. Victor, stop. We'll fight this another way. She dragged him back toward the SUV, his rage still spilling over in muttered curses. When their car screeched away, the silence that followed felt heavy but cleansing. Samuel turned to me, his voice steady. The trust makes their path impossible now. They can yell, they can threaten, but legally they are shut out. I nodded, my hands trembling slightly. It's over? Not completely, Betobza, he said. There's still the matter of the money they already tried to move. Patricia flagged another attempted transfer last night. 15,000 routed toward that facility deposit. With today's filing, that becomes evidence of theft. We're pursuing charges. The officer confirmed it. If the DA accepts the case, Victor could be indicted for financial exploitation. It carries prison time. I sank into a chair, the reality slowly settling over me. For months they had chipped away at me, but now the tide had turned. The law was finally catching up to their schemes. That evening, I sat on my porch, watching the sun drop behind the apple trees. The air was crisp, the leaves starting to turn. My notebook rested on my lap, filled with every detail of the past months. Each page was a reminder of what I had endured, but also what I had overcome. As the sky darkened, the phone rang. It was Patricia. I wanted you to know, she said. The flagged transactions are officially under investigation, and with the trust in place, your accounts are secure. They can't touch you anymore. Thank you, I whispered. You did the hard part, she said gently. You refused to be silenced. After I hung up, I looked out at the orchard one more time. The branches swayed in the evening breeze, strong and unbroken, just like me. The next day, Victor tried again, not with force but with words. He sent a letter, handwritten, left on my porch. It said, "You destroyed our family. You chose lawyers over blood. One day you'll regret it." I read it once and tucked it into the folder of evidence. It was not a wound anymore. It was proof. Proof of what he had become. Samuel called later to update me. The DA is reviewing the case. It looks strong. They can't spin this as care anymore. The recording, the transfers, the documents, it all points to exploitation. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in months, I felt not just relief, but strength. They had tried everything: coercion, lies, manipulation, intimidation, and failed. The battle was not finished, but I had already won something greater. I had my dignity back. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. After the confrontation at my door and the restraining order, Victor kept his distance. Lacey stayed silent too. The house no longer echoed with surprise visits or forced conversations. Instead, the only sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the rustle of the wind through the apple trees outside. For the first time in months, I could sit in my kitchen without dread. But quiet did not mean everything was settled. Samuel called often to update me. The investigation was moving forward. The district attorney had taken an interest in the evidence and was preparing charges. Each time Samuel spoke, I felt the walls around me grow sturdier. One afternoon, Patricia invited me to the bank to sign the final documents for my trust. She greeted me with the same calm assurance she had shown in that office the day I slipped her the note. "Everything is locked down now," she said. "Your accounts are secure. No joint holders, no hidden loopholes. Only you have control." I signed with steady hands. When I walked out of the bank, sunlight touched my face and I felt lighter. The chain Victor had tried to wrap around me had been broken link by link, yet I could not pretend the damage had not been done. In the quiet evenings, I sometimes replayed his words, the way he told me I would regret standing up for myself, the way he said I owed him. Those memories hurt. They cut deeper than the paperwork ever could. To heal, I turned back to my routines. I dug my hands into the soil of the garden, trimming roses, planting late autumn vegetables. I joined my book club again, walking into the library with my head held high. Friends who had heard the gossip now saw me with their own eyes, steady and clear. I did not need to defend myself. My presence was proof enough. The neighborhood that once echoed with Lacey's whispers of confusion now echoed with something else: respect. People nodded when I passed, some even stopping to tell me they admired how I had stood my ground. Mrs. Yates, the neighbor who had once called after hearing lies, stopped me at the mailbox. "Eleanor, I'm sorry for ever doubting you. I see now how strong you've been." Her words warmed me, not because I needed validation, but because they reminded me that truth eventually surfaces, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. Meanwhile, Samuel kept building the legal wall around me. He arranged for the return of the deposit Victor had placed on the assisted living facility. He filed the paperwork to recover the 15,000 Victor had attempted to move. Piece by piece, everything they had tried to take was pulled back. One evening I sat on the porch with my notebook in hand. I flipped through the pages filled with dates and words I once wrote with trembling hands. Now those same pages looked different. They were not just records of pain. They were evidence of survival. I closed the notebook and set it aside. The apple trees swayed gently in the evening breeze, their branches thinning as autumn deepened. I thought of Tom again, and for the first time the memory did not sting. It steadied me. I had faced betrayal, but I had also reclaimed dignity. That was a victory he would have been proud of. Later that week, Samuel called with news that the DA's office was ready to move forward. "They will be charged formally in the coming weeks," he said. "It may take time, but the law is on your side now." I thanked him, my voice steady. It's not just about punishment. It's about drawing a line. They need to know I will not be erased. "That line is clear now," Samuel said. That night, I slept without waking at every sound. I no longer needed to check the locks twice or hide documents in the cedar chest. The danger was still out there, but it no longer sat in my living room pretending to be family. As the days passed, I began to look ahead. I considered volunteering at the community center, maybe sharing my story with other women who might face the same manipulation. If it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. And maybe my voice could help someone else find their strength sooner. One Sunday morning, I baked a pie with the apples from my own trees. I carried it next door to Mrs. Yates and shared it over coffee. We talked about books, about the changing season, about ordinary things. For the first time in a long while, life felt ordinary again. The scars of betrayal remained, but they no longer controlled me. The fear had faded, replaced by calm certainty. My home was mine. My land was safe. My life was in my hands. And that was enough. The day of the final hearing arrived with a crisp chill in the air. I walked into the courthouse with Samuel beside me, his briefcase filled with months of evidence. Patricia was already there, her quiet nod reminding me of the moment she had first slipped me her card. We had come full circle. Victor and Lacey sat on the opposite side of the room, their shoulders stiff, their faces pale. For once, there was no smugness. They looked worn, the weight of consequences pressing on them. The district attorney presented the case in measured tones, laying out the recording, the attempted transfers, the false documents, the deposit made in my name. Piece by piece, the story unfolded, undeniable. When the judge spoke, his words were clear. This court finds that Victor and Lacey Whitmore engaged in financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The restraining order will remain in place. Restitution is required for funds already taken. Further, probationary oversight is imposed to ensure compliance. It was not prison, but it was accountability. For me, that was enough. I did not need to see them locked away. I needed them to face what they had done, and to know the law had marked it as wrong. As we left the courtroom, Victor called my name. I paused in the hallway, Samuel at my side. Victor's voice was lower than I had ever heard it. Mum, I never thought it would come to this. I was desperate. I made mistakes. I can't take them back. I looked at him, my son, the boy I had once carried on my hip, the man who had tried to strip me of everything. My heart ached with both anger and sorrow. You hurt me, Victor. You betrayed me. But you are still my son. What you do next is up to you. If you want forgiveness, it starts with honesty and change. His eyes dropped, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than entitlement. Shame. Lacey touched his arm, her expression unreadable, and they walked away. Outside the courthouse, I breathed deeply, the cool air filling my lungs. The land was still mine. My home was still mine. My dignity was intact. But more than that, I had learned something essential. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are survival. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to rhythm. I tended my garden, baked pies for the neighbours, joined my book club without fear of whispers. Patricia became a friend I saw often. Samuel checked in not as a lawyer, but as someone who respected my strength. The weight of dread was gone. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch, I saw Victor's car pull into the street. He did not stop, but he slowed and looked toward the house. Our eyes met through the glass. He gave a small nod before driving on. It was not reconciliation, but it was a beginning, and that was enough for me. I knew healing would take time. Trust could not be rebuilt overnight. But hope flickered where bitterness had once lived. Maybe one day my grandchildren would run through my yard again, laughing among the apple trees. Maybe one day Victor would understand that love is not control, that family cannot be bought or coerced. Until then, I would live each day on my terms, rooted like the trees Tom and I had planted, strong and unshaken. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted, you know how heavy that pain can be. But you also know that standing your ground is not selfish, it is survival. Justice may not always look like revenge, but it can look like dignity, safety, and peace. I wonder, if you were in my place, would you have chosen forgiveness as I did, or would you have wanted harsher punishment? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories that matter.